Okay, so yesterday we have seen the MVC architecture, ADF architecture, which is typically model view controller architecture. We have seen that where actually we have a database and we have a view object and entity object. And if you wanted to pull any data on the user interface, which is updatable, then we have to go with the entity object. And if you wanted to, sorry, I'm muting everyone. You can, if you have any questions. Okay, so if you want to show on the user interface something read-only, then we have to refer the view object. View object, typically you can contact database directly to get the read-only attributes which can be shown on the user interface. But whatever data you want to show on the user interface, that should come through view object, and from view object will have view instance created in the application module, and data control refers the view instance to pull the column names or column values and show up on the user interface. Okay, so you have seen this model view controller architecture yesterday, and now we started creating a small project in our developer yesterday. We have created application. In the application, we have created a project. Basically, that's what we have done. Okay, once we create the project, then what's the first step we have to do? So once we create the project, what all we wanted to show, we see at the end result, we wanted to show some data on the user interface. Okay, and to show some data on the user interface, we have to pull some data from the database table. To pull the database table, based on kind of operations we wanted to do, we have to create entity object and view object respectively, right? So instead of, I was also showing like in the view object, we have different view objects. One is read only, one is other is updatable, and we have a transient which will store the value temporarily, and which is static. We have four kind of view objects we have seen yesterday. And now let us try to explore each and every kind of view object and entity object respectively. So what I will do, I will start with a simple screen, basically where you just view the data. Okay, that's what we will do. Okay, so to get the, it means just to view only means you won't want to do any DML operation, you just want to see you just want to read only data, basically that's what you wanted to do. So what I will do, I wanted to create a read only screen. If I want to create a read-only screen, I have two things. Again, if my purpose is to read only data, then what I can do, I can refer the database directly from the view object, and I can from the view object, I can have the application module, data control, and user interface. We will see that. Okay, that's the purpose, right? Before going to do anything in my application, in my project, what I need to do, I need to refer the database. So it means my application should have a connection to the database. That's my first priority. I need to have a connection to my database. How we can do? What we can do, you can define the database connections at project level or our whole JDeveloper level. We can do that. If you go to databases, we have the IDE connections. In the IDE connections, we have several projects here. In this IDE connections, what you can do, you can create a connection. Okay, you can create a new connection here. In the new connection, you can give a connection name. In my case, I'm going to give a connection name RB, let us say RB batch 3. Okay, it's my connection name. And connection type, I'm going to have Oracle connection. And now, to whom you are trying to connect to? We are trying to connect your database. To have database connection, then what you should have, typically, you should have database installed in your computer, or if you're using your company server, typically, you should able to access the company database from your computer, basically. That's as simple as such. Okay, so if you have database installed in your computer, then typically you know the username and password. And I have my database, so I'm going to give my username and password. And driver is thin driver. You can keep the thin driver by default. You can save the password. Every time you need to enter the password. And host name, I have my host name. And I have my port number. And I have my service ID. And I can do my test connection here. It is saying that success. It means I'm able to connect to the database. That database is 11G basically, which was installed for me. Okay, it means I'm able to do that. I will save this connection. Okay, so my database connection is ready. So if you see that, my database connection is ready. Okay, it means my database connectivity is established to all my projects, the first of all. Okay, as my database connection is ready, now I am ready to fetch data from my database. To fetch data from my database, as I said, my first requirement is to just pull some data from the database and show it up on the screen. That's my simple requirement, right? So what I need to do to pull the data from the database, as it's read-only database, I can rely on the view object, right? So what I need to do, I need to create a view object. To create a view object, where does the view object will be? We have a model, view, and controller. View object is residing in this model box. So view object, to create a view object, typically you have to create in the model project. So you have a model project. In that, I can go to new. Here, I can go to view object. I go to view object. So you are saying, first time, as the first time we are trying to create a view object, what it will do, it will try to connect to the database. Do you have a connection to connect? I don't have connection. I will just add, okay, where is my connection? Okay, let me quickly add it here. RB batch 03. So I'm going to add it. I got my connection. So okay, now it is going to say that in which you are going to create a view object, in which package you want to save the view object. And if you remember, when we create the project, what we did, we created a project with the default package rb.oracleapps.pr.service. And when we create the model, we got .model. When we create a view controller, we got a view controller packages created automatically yesterday. So in the model, I'm going to start creating my view object and entity objects going further. In this scenario, as I'm going to create a view object, I will follow a pattern. Under model, I'll create another thing called Vivo. Within Vivo, I will keep storing my view objects. So in this case, what is a view object? So basically, I have a simple table called select star from xx_country. Okay. So what I will do, I will refer this table for now. So I will call it as a country table. So for that, I would say it as a RB country read only Vivo. I will say read Vivo because we are trying to read only Vivo. So read only Vivo, and I did that, and its display name will be RB country read only Vivo. And we can now, if you see the extents, basically, if you wanted to extend this Vivo based on any other Vivo or any other class, we can give it. But as of now, we are at very basic level, nothing to worry about that. We're just creating a Vivo. And here, what type of Vivo you are trying to create here? What type of view object you are trying to create here? Are you trying to create a view object based on the entity object, that is updatable Vivo, or you want to create a custom SQL query, means you are just trying to query database directly, it means it's a read-only Vivo, or you want to create a programmatic means where actually programmatically you derive the value, but that value won't be stored anywhere in the database table, but we will derive the value programmatically to hold it till the complete session ends. It is the case you can go for a programmatic, that is also called transient view object. and we have a static list, a standard list of values, constant list of values, then we can say it as a static VO, right? So in our case, as we are trying to get a read-only VO, I am going to custom SQL query. Okay. So
Lakshmi, what is the purpose of extends?
So extends basically it's an if we are trying to create a view object based on another view object, in that case we have to extend that view object. So
is it not copy?
Not copy, it's inheriting the properties of that view object, and you can append your own properties to the current view object. You can say like that.
Are we incorporating in it?
Yes, incorporating means incorporating the additional features to the existing view object. You can think of like it.
Okay, so we are just modifying the existing one then, right? Extending or something.
Extending is not modifying. Basically, it's inheritance. In the OOPS concept, we have inheritance, where actually if you are inheriting the properties of the base class, and it means you are not modifying the base class. You are inheriting what are the properties that base class has. Means that the base class has 10 methods, 10 functions. In the child class, you could able to use all. You can call all the 10 functions within this class, and in this class you can have more class appended, more classes, more functions created in the child class. It means this is child class can have access to all the 10 methods available in the base class along with its own methods. That's the typical inheritance mechanism. But here it won't make much sense because we are a very beginning actually. So it's a functionality internally. If you want
of course. Want to do the functionality.
Yes. So it's a custom SQL query. It's a read-only query. Now I can write the query here. Typically, how can I write the query? I can write the query directly here, or you can go to Query Builder and get the tables. Okay, you have both the ways. If I want a query, I will just say that select star from XX_country. I can just write like this. Or if you don't want, you can go to Query Builder. The Query Builder, if you ask for that, I'm muting because I'm getting some background noise. I can go here. I can pick my this is my schema. Basically, I connected to the ERP database. Basically, it will have all the different schemas. So I have my app schema. In the app schema, typically I have my country. So here I can query. So it look for the object. We have this object database table, and within this table, I have these columns. So I want to bring all these columns into this. Okay, so I got all the columns here, and you want to apply any where clause, anything like that. I don't want to apply anything. I just want to pull the columns. Okay, click on OK. Then you have all the columns like this. Okay, you can test and explain. So typically, you can have your own. You can have your here. Okay, I don't want to customize this one. So I was trying to, I just got this query here. So I will show you the results in the screen. So let's go ahead. Here you want to create any bind variables. Bind variables in sense, along with the table, we have in the table, I have the country ID, country name, and region ID. And along with that, I wanted to have some value to carry along with my view object, which is not typically stored in the database table, but I want to carry some other value along with my view object. Currently, in this view object is having all these values, all these 3 columns. Along with these 3 columns, if you want to carry another column along with me, then you can create the bind variable. But as of now, for our example, we are not playing around with that, but when we talk about list of values, I'm going to show how to use the bind variables. So click next. And here we have the attribute mappings, country ID, country name, region ID. So how the view attributes looks like. It is a country underscore ID is a table column name, and the view attribute looks like country ID, country name, region ID, like that. Okay.
Lakshmi, a bind variable is nothing but it's a parameter, right?
It's not like a parameter. Think of like this. So we have a table. Okay, so we have a table like this. So now you have a screen. So in your screen, what you wanted to do, you wanted to print country name. and country name and region. And think of a thing like that. You wanted to store the 2-digit code of your country, example. Okay, so how do I derive a 2-digit code? I could derive a 2-digit code based on the first letter of, I mean, if I have two words, I can derive the first letter from the first word, take a first letter from the second word. So some derived value, example, you can say, right? So
Okay.
it's not stored anywhere, but I want to store it in a temporary. Oh. Oh, I'm just muting. Okay. You can unmute yourself if you have any questions. So it's a temporary variable, basically, which won't stored anywhere, but we just refer it for your validations or to display on it on your screen or for something else, right? Then you can use the bind variable. Bind variable doesn't be stored anywhere in the table. Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so these are the attributes. Now go next. So each attribute will have some properties. So country ID is my attribute and what type it is, because in Oracle I have defined this country ID as a number. Basically, country ID is given as a number. So that is the reason in Java terminology it took it as country ID is a number, country name is varchar, region ID is number, as simple as such. No primary columns here. So that is the reason it's type took as a big decimal. It's a Java specific data type. And value type is a literal. Literal means we are bringing it from the column. We are not actually writing any expression on top of it. And value is mapped to a column or a custom column or SQL. That is true because it is coming from SQL. And it is queryable, and I will make it as key attribute. Typically we should have at least one key attribute out of all the three, as it is my dummy table which doesn't have any primary keys or unique keys here, so that is why it didn't checked up. If we have a primary keys for this or column, then automatically become a key attribute. But for any view object you should have at least one key attribute. I have chosen the key attribute. And discriminator, I mean, if it is a discriminator column, maybe basically if you have multiple columns are there and each column you want to discriminate by, maybe if you want to pull it up on somewhere and you want to discriminate each column by comma or by pipe like that, and that discriminator want to be stored at some column level in the table, then we can choose that one as a discriminator. We will talk about that maybe if we talk about some advanced concepts. And there is something called updatable. Here, updatable section, there are three things: always, while, new, and never. Means, does country ID is updatable column? No, it's never updatable column because we are just querying the data. Querying the data for our view object. Okay, it's a read-only data basically, which we cannot be updatable because this view object is based on a query, right? If you wanted to get an updatable, typically if you create an entity object, then any view object created on the entity object will become updatable. We are going to see that in our next example. Okay, and we have an alias column name. If you wanted to keep an alias, we can keep it, and the expression should match the column name. It is matching it, and it's a type number. Now, similarly, we have properties for each and every column basically. Okay, you should have at least one key attribute. I took it, and I'm going next. Here,
value type, what is the literal and expression? Expression means?
So expression means basically if you wanted to see, value means, literal means typically if there is a blank in the column, what value should go. Okay, and the expression means
some hard-coded value.
Yeah, we can hard code it, or we can multiply this column with something, or add some column, or do the substring, or some manipulation on top of the column, and you want to store that in this one, then you can typically use that. Okay, so but anyway, I am not going to use that now. Next thing is Java. Basically, I am not going to talk about this Java methodology for now because I need to explain what is a definition class, what is an object class, what is a row class, and how it is being used in the real implementation. So I will take that concept for tomorrow. And for now, I'm not going to generate any Java classes because I'm not going to show it in a programmatical way in this session. I will talk about the fundamentals today. So go next. Right. So once we create the view object, okay, now once we create the view object, this view object should be registered in the application module. Only when it registered in the application module, then only data controller can get that application, that view object, and show it on the user interface. Similarly, data control can get data from user interface and send it to view object, and by referring to the entity object can place the data in database, right? So typically we should have the view object registration happen in the application module. For that, in this step, it will ask us, do you want to add it to the application module? Then you are saying that, yes, I want to add it to the application module. So which package you wanted to add that? Means here typically we can create application module here. So what I am going to do, add my view object to the application module, and I'm going to create application module here. So what I will do, I will create application module in the model dot, I will say AM is application module, and here I will give my name for the application module. I will say RB application module 1. I will just say like that, okay, and then I will click on next. Okay, now what I did, I got my view object created and I got my application module, and this application module has a reference to this view object. I will show you how it is. Click on finish. So keep seeking the arc structure here. This structure will be creating here. Under model, we have created two packages, application module and view object. Under view object, we have created an view object here. There's a read-only view object. Okay, and this read-only view object has the XML file. This XML file, we have the metadata of that read-only this view object. If you see the metadata, typically what ADF will do, it typically convert that XML metadata into understandable format. If you want to see the real XML data, you can go to the source here. Typically, the source will have the real XML format of the view object that you have created. And what for the same thing, typically ADF will convert into this understandable format where typically you can see the real meaning of the view object. Typically, we have created the view object, read country, RB country read only view object. It's a display name. It is a package name. It is not extending anything. We didn't set any property set yet. And business component project is model, because under the model we have that. Under the model project we have the viewer got created, and we have some functionalities called tuning, which actually it will be good if when we talk about performance. Basically, as any view object refers to the database table, so how do you want to pull the data out of the database? Basically, it's this tuning parameters control SQL execution and how data is fetched from the database. Do you want to pull all rows, or do you want to pull it in the batches and as needed? And if you wanted to optimize the query, you can provide a hints here, then that query will get optimized. And we have something called accessible mode. Accessible mode, basically we have scrollable and forward only or range paging. Scrollable in sense, if you remember in our Fusion applications,
Then Lakshmi, what is the difference between the text and explain and this tuning? There is a section, there is a button, right? When we have written a query at the very beginning.
We're talking about
no, not this one. At the very beginning, we have selected some table and selected some columns to the right side.
Right.
There you see the test and explain. So that is what is the difference between that and this tuning?
Okay, basically test and explain, typically what it need to do, basically it will test that query is valid. Basically, as we have used query builder, it didn't show us if you write a query in that window, typically it will show as a valid query or not. Basically, that's the meaning of it. As I have queried it from the query builder, that is the reason when I said test explain, it didn't show up any result. So it will test means it will say that the query is valid. Explain means it will explain the plan of that query basically. So we have that provision to explain the performance tuning of this query as well. We will see that. Okay, let's understand some fundamental properties. So it's a tuning and scrollable mode. When I say that, if you see, in any of our Fusion applications, and all the Fusion application pages are built on this ADF model only. So whatever properties we are seeing here, those properties will be absolutely applicable to whatever pages you are seeing up here. Every page is built based on this ADF framework only. Okay. So example, if I go to my workforce, and if I go to person management, and if I just query for the people who are in something like John example. So typically what is happening here, so this is pulling the first 20 columns, and then it is, when we're scrolling it down, it is fetching the data. If you see here, if you scroll down, then it will fetch the data. Basically we have only these many people whose names is John. Basically that's what we observed. So I will search again. See here, typically first time it is showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 25 columns. If I scroll it, then it will keep fetching the data for remaining columns. That's the absolute use of the access mode. If you want to keep it as scrollable, or if you wanted to make it range basing means it can see the first 20 rows, and then you can click on next page to go to the next 20. That is the access mode basically. So what I am doing here, I am setting this access mode for this view object at the view object level only. Typically we can set these properties while defining the front end as well. When you design a front end, when you define a front end page, even the front end page, you have a provision to create what kind of block that we are trying to show up there. We can override the properties of the view object at program level as well. Okay, but if you won't override anything at the program level, at the user interface level, typically what happens, it will take the properties of the view object, and based on the view object properties, the data will be displayed here. Typically what happened here, it is nothing but a view object, where actually we pull data. Whenever I search for the data, when I click on search button, what typically happened, it went to the database and executed a view object, and the view object shown up the data here. That's as simple as such. This view object has these many columns. Okay, and these columns came up here, and we're seeing the data. Right, same thing happening here. Right, so we have, this is general properties. We have entity objects. Typically is this view object based on the entity object? No, there is no entity object defined in this view object. That is the reason it is blank. If you create a view object based on entity object, then this will show up in entity object. And what attributes we have in this? We have the country ID, country name, region ID, and this is big decimal, next one is string, and it is big decimal, is the alias names. And REST payload is typically, when I talk about web service, I will talk about this when I say info. This info column, whenever any SQL query, any view object is based on an SQL query, or any view object that is a transient view object or a static view object, then typically this info will come as calculated with the column name. If you see any view object attribute with calculated as a column name, it means it is a simple read-only view object, a transient view object, a static view object, as simple as such. Okay, these are all the same properties what we have seen while creating the view object. Okay, now there's a business rules. I will talk about the business rules and view criteria, Java, accessors, user interface hints, user interface categories, service shaping in our subsequent classes. I'm not going to touch any of this for now. Maybe view criteria, I will touch it later part of today. But remaining things, business rules, these are typically used when we go with a programmatic approach of handling the view objects or entity objects. Okay, and we have something called query, where we can define the query here, and we can always modify the query here, and you can always use a query builder to map the query. And this is what actually Srinivas is asking: what happens if we create test and explain? Typically, if you write a query here, so if you write a query here on your own, then the test and explain will say that that query, whatever you written, is valid or not. If you write query something from query builder already takes care of the syntaxes, so everything is valid. That's why it's not showing up any results here. Okay, we will test it out in our next view object example. And if you want to order by this data, then you can give the order by. And by default, it is Oracle named binding. And we have something called Oracle positional and JDBC positional binding. Typically, this named binding and positional binding is nothing but if you think of a query where typically you wanted to query the data based on the position or based on the name. Example, if I had query like this and I wanted to say where country underscore ID is equal to column 1 and region underscore ID is equal to column 2. If this is my kind of thing, it is called position based. Okay, if I say something like that, then the first one we have to make sure that we have to remember the position. The first one is a country, and we have to remember the position number 2 is a is also a number. No, it's not a number. It's actually, yeah, it's a character, and we have to remember those two. Yeah, if you won't remember it properly, then it is not going to give any result. It's actually reason ID. I have given the country name there. So typically reason ID, I should give something like I need to choose number, and I need to give. I don't remember what exactly it is. Yeah. Yeah, where country ID is equal to 1 and region ID equal to 100. If I say that, then my data will come. This is called position based. If I wanted to query the same thing like this, like we have the alias name is country underscore ID, then I have to say, if I say like this, and region underscore ID, okay, then this is called naming based. Basically, it's asked for the names. That's the difference between the position and named, basically. So we can choose any of that. I'm going with the name based because when I prepare a query in my program, then typically I need to follow the name. I should not follow the position based kind of structure. Okay. So I'll talk about bind variables in my next example. And we have view criteria. I will talk about view criteria next example, and subsequent things I will talk about next example. Okay, we have seen the view object. Now we have the application module. So if you see, when I click on the application module, if you see that at the bottom we have something called data control. A data control got created. This data control didn't create actually. When I create application module, it automatically creates a data control. So that's what it is. It automatically creates a data control here. When I create application module, it creates a data control. If I expand the application module and click on the application module, this application module properties, it is application module name, it is my package name, and it's not extending anything. And if you go to the data model, in this data model, you are seeing view object instances. What it has, this data model has this RB country read vivo 1. Our view object name is RB country read vivo, and while creating at the end of the step of the view object creation, we have assigned the view object to the application module. When we assign the view object to the application module, an instance got created. It is RB country read vivo 1 is the instance name. It is actually what is this instance is for the class rb.oracle apps or whatever our package is, and rb country read vivo. For this view class or for this view object, we got the instance got created. If we have any instance got created, that instance will hold the real real values basically. Okay, so we got the view instance here. If you want to change the view instance name, you can always change it. I would say RB RB Vivo instance. I would say that. Okay, Vivo instance. So it is mean that it is what I got. I have changed it to my to change the name to RB country read Vivo instance. It is the instance. So application model has the instance, right? So if you remember, if you see that this data controller, as and when I click on the application module, we have the data control here. If we expand this data control will also have the reference to this instance. When this data control has reference to this instance, then what this data control can do on that, this is the instance. This instance will have these 3 attributes, and what operations it can do on that, it can execute, it can go to the first column, first row, it can go to the last row, it can go to the next row, it can go to the previous row. It can do many operations on this row, on this view object. Okay, so what typically I will do, if I create my user interface screen, if I create my web page, I will drag and drop all these respective columns, what I want to show it on the screen, and on those columns, what I need to do, I will create operations like execute, means execute the query. Go to the first. If I say first, I will drag a first here. If I click on the first button, then it will go to the first row. I have the operations performed on that. So data control has that ability. How the data control got the ability? Because application module, we have created the view instance. How the application module got created? When view instance is created, view got created, we have given it the last step as associating the view object to the application module. So that is the reason I have shown this architecture at the beginning. You can understand like view object instance got created in the application module, and application module creates a data control, and data control refers the view object based on the view instance. Okay, right. So we have seen we are almost getting what till here we are able to get from database to view object, view to application module, here to data control. Now what we need to do, the next thing what we need to do, we should test out whether whatever configuration we have done now is working or not. It means whether we could able to pull data in this application or not. That's what we need to, we can test out. We have a provision to test it out now. Okay, but we might have a question. How can we test out data is coming up or not if we don't have the user interface? User interface, nothing but a web page, basically, right? We don't have the user interface created yet, but how do we test it? Okay, so typically, if I say user interface, typically we should have a browser-based user interface, or we should have mobile-based user interface, or we should have a desktop user interface. So what Oracle has given to test out with your fundamental structures, we have something called Swing. It's the ADF component, a Swing component. If someone is aware of the core Java, we have something called applets and swings. We have something called Swing, which typically we have a Swing, actually Swing-based application. That's also called app tester. We can use app tester to test out whatever we have done till now. Okay, so what I will do, I will close it. Sorry, I will save it. And go to my application module, because my application module is the main thing now, and I'm going to run this application module because application module holds everything. So I can run the application module, save it, and run it. So when I run it, it will start it will start triggering the inbuilt server. Basically, it's not typically a server, it's typically a Java virtual machine. It will trigger a Java virtual machine and triggers a Swing application to pop up, basically. So that's what it is doing. So it is actually running a Java virtual machine. Typically, we are not, till now we haven't created any jar files or something like that and deployed any server like that. We have just built a standalone application and we are trying to run it. So it populated a ADF model tester. So it is our tester window. Okay, it's a Swing application where we can test out our components, whatever we have created till now. So in our tester, in the application module, we have one Viva instance, right? So if you right click on the Viva instance, it is actually going to the other window. So let me do like this. If you click on it, if you click on show, then what happens? It will try to execute the query at the backend. Basically, it's trying to execute the Viva object. In the Viva object, we got the country ID, country name, region ID. It's a Swing application where we can navigate, go to move next row. You can go to country IDs 2, India, and 101, and country ID 3, country name, and region ID 102. So here I can navigate first row, next row, like that, and I can go to end row as well. I can do some navigations here, and if you see, only I have these navigations enabled, but I don't have these buttons enabled here. What is this? It is actually nothing but insert a new row. I cannot insert a new row in this. Why? Because I have created a read-only view object. I cannot delete a row because I haven't. It's still again, it's mine is read-only view object. I cannot commit a data. I cannot roll back a data. I cannot specify view criteria. We'll talk about view criteria in a while. And I cannot do any validation, and I cannot set any bind variables here. I haven't created any bind variables yet. So what is happening here? We just testing our application. What we did till now, we created a view object. We had application module and data control, and we are testing our view object. And we can further testing, we are using ADF model tester, which typically test our application using the Swing application. We Swing actually triggers using the Java virtual machine, but not from the server. Once it got triggered, we can typically test out what we have done. Okay, and as it is read-only view object, we cannot do any operations on this application. Okay, right. So we have tested read-only view, read-only object. Now let us see how we can create the updatable view object through which we can update the data using these things. Okay, so I'm going to close this it's the ADF model tester, and it's going to stop it. Now what I will do, I will create a new view object which is updatable view object. Basically, to get the updatable view object, what we need to do? To get the updatable view object, we cannot refer database like this, because if you want to read only, then only you can refer it. If you want to get that updatable view object, you should refer the entity object. Only entity object can refer the database to update the data, and from entity object we can refer the view object. So for now, to get the updatable view object, I should create the entity object. Let me go ahead and create entity object. So what I will do, again, I'll go to my model and I'll go to create new. This time I'll create the entity object. Okay, entity object, and here again it will ask for the package. So what I will do, in the model, I create another package called evo, where I will keep all my entity object. Package name should be small cases, evo. And what is the name you want to give for this evo? I will give the name as RB country evo. Okay, so RB country evo, let us say test evo. I will just say like that, test entity object, and then I'm not extending anything here. And here, if you see here, now it is asking for your database object. Choose your database object on which you are trying to create the entity object. So I had to choose my schema object. I had to choose a table. Entity object can always refer only one table. Let me close the window. I think it's raining here. Okay, so I need to choose the object here. So what I will do, I will again try to choose the country. Okay, so I have to use the country here. So go next. It is the attributes it is referring. Yes, this is what I want. Okay, so go next, and we have same attribute settings. So I will make the country as a primary key. And if you remember here, if you see updatable, it is showing as always now. Previously, it was when we create a view object, it was showing never, but by default, it is showing always because we are creating the entity object. Entity all object allows the columns to get modified. Okay, and whenever you want to get a column that needs to be modified, that should be persistent. Whenever it's a persistence, it means we are representing a column in a database table. Okay, and is it a mandatory column? Then you have to set mandatory. And if change indicator in sense, sometimes we won't commit data to the database, but we will maintain the changed value in the cache memory. So if that is continues to happen, then typically we mark it as change indicator, but typically we won't set it up. Basically, you won't maintain the data in the cache memory for a longer time. So as and when we get the data in the cache memory, in that session only we will try to commit it or roll back it. So it's optional. Either ways it will work. And is derived from SQL expression? No, it is actually standard column. Is it a unique? No. Is it a queryable? Yes, it is queryable. And refresh. So how frequently you want it to, I mean, not frequently, when do you want to refresh the data in your entity object? Entity object, nothing but a data in the table, right? So when you want to refresh the data in the table, refreshing nothing but go and fetch the data again from the database. If you do any update or insert, do you want to refresh the data again? Then you can choose both. Okay, I'm going to choose both for now and click next. Do you want to, again, we have to generate Java classes as we are not looking at programmatic approach in this session. Maybe tomorrow we'll look about this classes. Basically, it will carry three classes basically. Entity object definition class, entity definition class, and entity collection class. I'll talk about the importance of these classes in the next session. Right, so it will ask, do you want to generate a view object based on this entity object? Then you have to choose yes. Okay, yes, I want a view object based on this entity object. Then only I could able to start handling in the user interface. Yes, I need a view object based on the entity object. So what I will do, I can choose it here. If you don't choose, then that view object is not good enough to use it in your user interface. We cannot use it. Okay, then we have to create the view object definitely for the entity object. Okay, for here I am saying generate a default view object. In this case, I am saying the package name should be Vivo because that is my Vivo. That's where I am storing my Vivo objects. And what is the name of that Vivo you wanted to give? I wanted to give test Evo view object, because it's just Evo's view object. I just want to give a name like that. And do you want to add this application module? Do you add this view object to the application module? Yes, I want to add it to the application module. Then all I can refer it in my data control, right? So yes, I want to add it to my application module. So which application module you wanted to add? I wanted to add it in my, here, where is it? We have in the AM. In the AM, we have that. So it is a package. In that package, this is my application module. So in that module, I wanted to add my view object, right? So I did that. Why I'm not going to create a new application module? Because I'm creating a one project. In that project, I wanted to handle only one transaction. One transaction in the sense, I wanted to handle one session basically. In that session, I will play with these multiple view objects at a time. Okay, I don't want to have two different sessions with two multiple threads. Okay, so that is the reason I am not creating different application module. Most of time, what we have to remember is if you are creating any application which is specific to one specific process flow, then if you have any number of view objects, always good choice to keep it only one application module. That is a good implementation. If you create different application module, it means you are handling a different session actually. It means that application module will have its own session, that own commits and own rollbacks. This session will have own commits and own rollbacks. You don't have that level of control. If you have only one application module, that application module will take care of a single commits, single rollbacks, and single data control like that. Okay, that's why I'm choosing the existing application module. I'm not creating any new application module. Click next. And we got all the entity object created. These are the attributes, and we are not defining any Java classes, and we have the view object. So, okay, we can finish. Now, again in the model, we have the Evo. In the Evo, we have the Evo package. We have the RB test Evo object got created, and also we have the test Evo view object got created based on this Evo, right? If you go to the Evo, these are the properties for the Evo. These properties will be same as the view object, and we have few more properties for security, basically, where you can read, update, and remove the current row. You have that level of security basically. So you can choose that security, and if you want to add any business logics, I will talk about business logics when I talk about the Java classes. And we have the attributes, where actually talks about the each and every attribute. Okay, and we have the business rules and Java methods. We will talk about this thing in tomorrow's session, including business events and view accesses. So I'll talk about this later. So we got the Evo object created, and based on this Evo object, we have the Viva object created. If we open this Viva object, this Viva object has the same thing, general entity objects. In the entity objects, if you see now, we have the Evo got created. We have the Evo got created, and it is an updatable view, right? And these are the attributes. If you see this attribute, here entity users became the entity name, the info became the blank. If info is the blank, it means it's based on the entity based view object. If info has something called calculated and some name, it means that belongs to a read only view object, or transient view object, or static view object. Okay, so yeah, let's
So to understand whether it is a view object or edit object, we can decide based on the information. That's it, right? Or is there any other notation or naming convention properties we can say?
By seeing that, yeah, by seeing that you can seeing the definition itself, you can understand. If you go to general, it is entity object.
Okay.
It's a view object. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So by seeing it, you can think like that. But
that is one of the additional check then, yeah.
Yeah, additional check. But more than that, you should understand the conceptual wise, architectural wise, what is the difference. That is very important. Maybe you will understand more when we go see more examples probably. But yeah, but you should understand this architecture. It is very heart of the ADF. Okay. Okay, so we got this Evo as well. And if you go to application module now, this application module now will be referring the it has the two Vivos. One Vivo is the one we created before, and it is other Vivo that is based, that other Vivo instance that is based on this text Evo view object, right? If you see, this is it is the this definition, this instance name is given here. Okay, I will give us. I should not give. I'll keep it like that. Maybe if I keep the name longer, it may not take it. I'm taking it longer. I'm keeping it. We have two instances now. Okay. So if you see that, this application module has still two view objects referred, and these two view objects has the two instances available in this data model of this application module. If I see the data control here, if I open the data control, this data control is having the two Vivo references. It means each Vivo reference again has these three columns, and it can do all these operations on this view instance. Similarly, for this view instance, it can do all these operations. Okay, so yeah, because we got the data control ready as well. So again, we have the entity object created based on the viewer got created. Application module, we registered the application viewer in the application module, and we got the data control already. So we have the data control referencing to the view instances. Then it's ready to test again. So what I will save it again, and I will again go to the application module, and I'll again run it. Again, we have the tester window opens up, and the tester window. Now we will see. We will try to execute both the view objects, and we will see the differences. Okay, and we'll understand how each view object is working within that data controller. So we have that two view objects got created, and it is a old view object, read-only view object, and it is EVO based view object. Okay, so if you run this, typically what is happening, nothing is updatable because it read-only view object. If I run this now, it is actually, as it is based on the EVO based, it has a provision to update the country ID, country name, and the region ID. It has the provision to do all these things. Okay, and if you see, it has the provision to add a row, delete a row, and validate a row. Okay, so if I go here and if I say region ID as 1000, I can update it. I can validate it first. Yes, it is validated. Now this commit and rollback is coming up. Okay, if I say commit it, then these changes will go into the database. Okay, how do I know that changes went into the database? Okay, what I can do, I can go to my database again here, and I'll open my connections here, and I'll go to my instance RB here. It will load all the objects within the database table. I can load to the tables here. Within the tables, it will be showing all the tables here. I will go to my table, access country here, and I will open that country here, and it will open up the data in this table. Here I could see, where's the data? I could see data got updated to 1000, right? I can see it from front end. If you have access to database, you can go to the database and you can go ahead and run it, and you can see this 1000 got updated here. So it got updated. The reason is simple. The reason is it is having the it is referring the entity object, and entity object is updatable, right? So typically what is happening here, when I am saying a commit, typically these two instances are being referred. I'm going to application back. Typically what is happening here, this application module has a data control. Data control has these two instances being referred. When this instance, when we are saying commit, okay, when we are saying commit, what is typically happening, there is some operations. We have operations called commit and rollback. Typically what is happening here, this data control is calling this commit operation. Calling the commit operation here. This data control is calling the commit operation, and this commit operation is going to the database, as simple as such. Okay, when the commit operation is going, whatever data till the commit won't go, then what happens? This view object will have the data existing in the cache memory, and it will refer to it will also send the data to entity object. They will store in the cache memory. So this cache memory will get committed once we issue the commit from here. So that is the operation. So as it is a Swing application, which has already built that create, execute, commit, rollback, all those things, every button has a logic written already. Basically, that is the reason everything getting executed automatically. If you go with a web application, you have to mention that specifically. If you click on this button, what needs to happen? We'll be seeing it maybe next class, basically how to handle it in the application. That's what's happening here. And ADF simplified that programming as well in a much better manner. It is one kind of thing where we can test it using the ADF model tester. We don't have this kind of provision in the Oracle application framework previously. Okay, so yeah, if you got question,
Lakshmi, could you please try to add one more row?
Yeah, if I add one more row here, so I'm going to add some Spain, and I'm going to add region ID as what is UK region ID 1000, or I will say some 2000, something like that. And I'm just validating it, and I'll be committing it. So once I commit it, I can come here and I can see this got added here.
Okay, right.
Okay, right. So same thing, you can delete it, and you can do many operations in this thing. Okay, right. So we did this. Okay, so we have seen the updation. Yeah, if you have access to the database, you can look at database. Typically, developers won't have access to the database. Then they will typically query the data using these databases the way. Okay, right. So now we have seen this example. Let us assume. Let us go with the next view object. The next view object is the static view object, right? Means, why do we need static? Think of a scenario. You wanted to maintain the list of values in your screen. Example, let us say I'm going back to my Fusion application here, and let us say I'm opening some person, and I'm into this manage employment screen. When I click on this person, and I'm trying to modify the data on the screen. So I'm trying to do some modifications on the screen. So let us say this is the list of values. I want to store this list of values. If it is Fusion, typically we have lookups table. 1 minute. 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Hello. Sorry. So right here, if you see the list of values here, typically if you wanted to maintain the list of values at somewhere, I mean, if you have some ABS background, people use it. People used to keep it in the value sets or the lookups. That is one way. Other way, I wanted to maintain the standard list of some typical developer typically want to maintain this list of values. Won't have any database table anyway. Just want to maintain the list of values. How do I maintain? Okay, same thing. If you want to go to any screen, any field, example, we have something like work from home, yes or no. You want to maintain yes or no values in some list. If I have the values maintained in the list, what I can do while defining this work at home field, for this field values, I will assign that view object. Then what happens when someone click on this button, I will execute this view and I will show the list of values here. That's as simple as such. Okay, so if you want to do that, right, then what I need to do typically, if the values are not being stored anywhere in the database, and if you wanted to maintain on your own for the application design perspective, then that list has to be stored in the static list. Okay, so I was telling before, right, the static list where actually we can store the list of values there. Okay, let us see how does it work. Let's go here, and I need to create another view object, view object. So I will go to here, model, go to new, and go to create a view object. Here, what I will do, I'm following a format here. If you see, I'm keeping all my viewers into model.viewer package. Here I will say Abhi static Vivo, static titles. I will say senior, junior, Mr., Mrs. Okay, senior, static title Vivo. Okay, and I'm saying it is a static list. It's not actually um, not referring anything here. I'm just sending a static list here. So before maintaining a static list, I need to show you one thing. Let me cancel it. Okay, so let me go to the, let me minimize this, all these things. If you see the model, there is something called bundle properties. We have that is something called resource bundle properties. Okay, if you open it up, this resource bundle properties, what it will do, it will actually maintain all the Vivo labels. Okay, all the standalone Vivo labels. Okay, so if you create any standalone Vivo labels, instance read-only Vivo or static Vivo or transient Vivo, those labels will be stored here. If we prefer create a static Vivo, it also maintain the static Vivo label here along with the values. Okay, the use of this model bundle properties file is very important. It won't be, I mean, as of now nothing makes sense, but this resource bundle will be used varily if we go in the further topics. Okay, I just want to show it. I want to show how it is going to be changed once you create the new view object. I'm going to new view object again, and I'm going to create Vivo, and I'm going to give it like this, and I want to give a static list, and I'm going to give next, and here as what attributes you are planning to keep in your view object, right? So I'm going to create a new attribute here, and I will going to say title. So basically you have to give title. Okay, so not variable, I will give a title list, I would say, and type is string. I'll say okay, so it is my title list. Okay, so when we create a view object and we create any attribute in the view object, that attribute won't be stored in the database but maintained for the application perspective, then that is called a transient variable, a transient attribute. Okay, so click next, attribute is title list. So now attribute settings, it is a string and it is a variable, it's never updates, and it's not mapping to any column, it's not discriminator, and it's not any passivate object. Passivation comes into the tuning. So next, static list. What? Okay. No key attribute. Do you want to specify key attribute? Yes, I will make it as a key. At least we should have one key attribute, as I was saying before. Click next, and here you wanted to add the list of values here. Where do you get the list of values here? You have two things. You can, if you have a CSV file or XML file or DAT file, you can go ahead and import it into your system. Okay, you can import that by respective character set. You can do that. If you have the CSV file, sometimes clients will send the file, send the data in a file. You take the file and use it here. If you don't have that, then what you can do, you can click on add, and you can say that Mr. and you can add Mrs. and you can add as many as you want. So we want to have junior, and you want to have senior, like that. Okay, so you have added the title list here, and you can modify up and down. You can go and do it up and down as per the order if you want. Go next. And do you want to add it to the application module? Yes, I want to add it to the application module. Then only I can bring it on your user interface. So I have to add it. And which application module I have to add? I prefer adding it to my same application module that I created. Okay, automatically the package will change. Click next, and it is the summary, and click finish. So and finish. So what happened here is typically created a static Vivo. Okay, static Vivo, and it doesn't have any tuning mechanism. maybe it's all based on the list whatever we have provided. You want to show all the rows, or it's scrollable, or fill last page of rows when paging through row set. Typical navigation properties will come up in this view object, and we have these attributes, and which is never updatable, and this is a list of values, and other values which I will talk about later. So this got created now. Okay, now what we can do, you can go and test it. It again will pop up the list of values whatever we have created basically. So if you want to quickly execute that, let's save all, and what's happening?
Expand the model, like. Yeah.
Expanded it. Oh, okay. Application module. Sorry.
Yeah.
So running. So my connection got disconnected. So I will say okay. So it's going to open up a window, and where you can do some testing of that the newly created static list. So why we are testing that? Once we make sure the data is coming up properly, then we will be confident to go ahead and create the user interface. So I'm running it. So it has Mr., Mrs., Junior, Senior, all that. And we are not updating it because it's not updatable. Okay, right. So now let me go a little more further. Let us think of a scenario like we have the application page, and let us say we can't continue. Think of a scenario. I'm going to application again, and I'm going to the directory. So in the directory, see the same screen. So what happens if I enter a name here, John? When I search, then what happens? Then automatically, based on the value got entered, a query will get execute and pull the data, right? And if I if I click on Robert Johns, then typically what happens? It will query the data of Robert John and show up on the screen, right? So think of it. It's a simple employees table. Okay, it's a simple employees table based on the person we are choosing. Based on the person we are choosing, what is happening based on the criteria, whatever based on the person we are choosing. Our kind example, if we choose country as 1, then 1 will come, as 2 will come, like that. So the query is same, but the criteria is different. So if that is criteria is different, and that criteria where condition is same, the parameters might change. So if you wanted to define a criteria, if you want to define a criteria to your view object, end of the day, view object is the one which actually pulling the data, is it? So if you want to apply a criteria to view object, we have a provision here where you can go ahead and create the criterias. If you go to view object, example, we have the read-only view object, which is actually pulling all the data. So if you open the view object, okay, so we have something called view criteria, where actually you can apply the criteria. You can apply the criteria, and you can say that you can apply the criteria, and you can define a criteria. You can say you can add an item, basically where you can see country ID equals or does not equal, less than, whatever condition you want it to, and operand, is it you want to give some hardcoded value, or you wanted to create a bind variable. Bind variable in sense, it is nothing but as simple as it's like nothing but where country ID is equal to some country ID, something like that, some ID. It's a bind variable. Okay, if you want to go with the bind variable, you can go with the bind variable. If you go with literal, you can give a literal like this. Okay, so here I will go with, anyway, literal is very clear. You understand, if you bind variable, if you do bind variable, you can do literal as well. So what I will do, I will create a bind variable here. Country ID, I would say it as country CID, or enter country ID, something like that. So I am going to create this variable. Name must be valid. Okay, it's a valid, should not have any CID. So I will say okay. Then yeah, and you can add more conditions as well. Example, if you wanted to, your country ID equal to CID and region ID equal to something, you can keep adding like this, and you can keep adding more attributes, something like this. You can keep doing as more and more you want. Okay, now, and also if you want to have two groups, okay, if you want to have two groups, like first where condition is all this, and add another group where if this satisfies this one or this one, something like this, then you have provision to add more criteria as well. Okay, and you also have provision to do union kind of thing. Click on that and add criteria. What it will do, it will have satisfy all these conditions and these conditions. Okay, and here actually we can end or union or not or something like that, you can say that. Okay, you have all level of provision, whatever SQL queries you do, you can maintain all that here. Okay, for now I'm taking out and I'm going to test a simple thing here. And here, whenever you're trying to apply the criteria, you can have to choose like what is the database mode. When you apply the criteria, you want to apply in the database level or you want to apply in the memory level. Memory means the cache memory. Okay, which criteria you wanted to apply to, right? So I can apply in both the place. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, I can do the both the place. Okay, so for now I'm applying database level. So whenever I apply the criteria, pull it from the database basically. So yeah, I have done this, and then you can explain plan. What is a somehow this is not working, so I will check it out why it is not working. So it will check for the query is valid. So yes, it is valid. And this validation, we have something called optional or required. I'll talk about it later. And click on OK. So we got criteria got created and it has a bind variable. Now we have created the criteria, but typically once you create the criteria, we have to apply the criteria. So where actually, if you see here, I'm still working at the view object and I have created a criteria for this view object. Okay, but this view object has instance referred in our application module. If you see, application module has these instances referred here, read-only view. So basically, yeah, basically this view instance is there. We have whatever we modified at the view object level. It doesn't mean the whatever criteria we created at the object level will apply to all these instances automatically. Okay, how I can do that? Let me run it and show you. So run it. So it is running. It is opening up. So see that read-only view instance. What happened here? It didn't ask for anything. It just run. It came up like that. What does it mean? Means the criteria is not applied. What you can do? You can click on this. You can specify, apply this criteria, and you can specify it, and click on OK. Then if you run this, apply it. Yeah, okay. No. Um, let me apply it again. So where is it? Apply the criteria. So I applied the criteria. Okay. So let's try to execute this again. Okay, so it has the bind variables now. So if we apply the bind variables, so what is that? So if we get the bind variables of 1 or 2, then typically it's a query actually. So invalid column type. So basically there is an error. The reason is maybe I have chosen is a country a big decimal, which is getting difficult to convert. Invalid column type. So what I will do, I'll quickly change that. So I will go to the view object again, and I'll go to criteria again. And here, this country ID, okay, here it is. You have country ID here. So what I will do, I will choose it as integer, probably. Okay. So let us try to save it, and then let's try to run it. So let's see what it's going to show. It's opening up. So now I have the bind variables were not enabled here. Why? Because the criteria is not defined yet. So if I run it, so even now the bind variables are not defined yet. Now what I need to do, if I go ahead and apply the criteria, then what happens if you see, if we re-execute the query, I'm going, it's not yet applied. Yeah, if once I apply the query and you click on the find, basically if I do the same thing, it is again throwing the error. Okay, so it's a java.integer. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me quickly remove this bind variable and apply a criteria. Instead of the country ID, I will say country name starts with something and a bind variable, and I will apply cname as a string, and then click OK, and then we have the cname now, and let's save it. So I want to make sure that I'm referring to country name, yeah. And now I will go ahead and run the save it and go ahead and run the model. So let us see. Once we run the model now, it will ask for the right. So now initially, when we are running it, it won't has any bind variable because we haven't applied the criteria. Now I'm applying it and click on find. It asks for the country name starts with U and OK. Oh. Okay, so I will check on this one. I don't know why it was not working. I will check on this criteria, and then I will do some troubleshooting. It should work. It's as simple as such. I'm just giving the plain. What is happening here? It's valid. I don't know. So let me do one thing. Let me delete it and add an item, and I will say just country name starts with the main variable again, cname. One more time, and if it won't work, then I will test it tomorrow. Okay, so it is country, upper country name like upper cname percentage.
Lakshmi, what is R group or ungroup? I think.
So yeah, if we add one more group actually, then this R condition will apply basically.
Okay.
So yeah, so let's do that. And then I will save it and run one more time, and then let's see if it won't come. Then I will look something, maybe some, I don't know what. Okay, typically, do we do like this? We can do it in a programmatical way as well. We have that provision as well. If we apply it here, typically what happens, let me apply the criteria, find, and start with United. Okay, I will check it out. We'll start with example tomorrow, and then we will see in a more, and we'll go with the programmatical way of doing it through Java classes. And then next we'll go with the user interface and start creating a simple page by using all these components together and how it is working out. And then we can start with the web service implementation using this ADF. Okay, right. So I'll stop here. And if you have any questions, ask me. And I know few people joined today and who has few other questions. I mean, I will wait end of the session. You can ask me. Okay. So for existing people, do you have any other questions?
Thanks, Lakshmi.
Yeah. Thanks, Pradeep.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.